Good afternoon and welcome to Aku Aku Ko. The drink I am making today has a curious history, a story linked to World War II. You have surely heard of Kamikazes, and that is the drink's name. The Kamikaze story is quite curious. If you are fans of war movies, you have undoubtedly seen the film Battle of Okinawa. Battle of Okinawa was not the first time that the kamikazes were in action. But it is true that it was the most famous battle where kamikazes acted because they managed to sink and damage nearly 200 American ships. At a great cost. But kamikaze. What does kamikaze mean? Naturally, the word is of Japanese origin. Legend has it that when Genghis Khan, ruler of the Mongol Empire, the largest empire in history, sought to invade Japan with a massive fleet, the Japanese had very few forces available to defend themselves. Then happened what they referred to as the miracle of the gods. A great storm occurred, destroyed the Mongol fleet, forcing them to retreat to China, and they were unable to invade. The Japanese people referred to this as kamikaze, which translates to divine wind or the wind of the gods. And so the word stuck. The word has existed since the 13th century, but in the Second World War, during the Philippines campaign in the year 1944, which is nearly a year prior, a few months prior to Okinawa's battle, there is a Japanese admiral, Tajiro Onishi, who argues that they must use a combat method similar to how the infantry used the banzai, which was a fight to the death, for the Air Force, and so he calls it Oka. Oka means cherry blossom, as it is a cherry blossom, because when cherry trees fall, the flowers drop until they hit the ground and the flower dies. The idea was that the pilots would board planes loaded with bombs, commit suicide, and dive into the ships, with the motto of one plane for one ship, in order to stop the American invasion. The first kamikaze in recorded history was a man named Yukio Seki, and sank the aircraft carrier St. Lo. This puts him in history. There is a plaque in the Philippines, at a base in the Philippines that remembers him. Well, the Okinawa battle, well, the Americans lost many ships and so on. And so, this is the story of the kamikaze pilots. They were young. They performed their Sikh ceremony. Almost all were very young, youths with almost no experience, who offered themselves voluntarily, giving their lives for their emperor and for their country. Which is, well, you must understand it honored them, or at least their mindset. Well, this is a bit of the history of the word kamikaze, but now let's move on to the cocktail. As I am going to start preparing the true history of the cocktail. A cocktail glass, as always, with our cooling system, water, and ice. It happens that Japan is occupied by the Americans. The GHQ takes charge anyway. They keep the emperor. Well, all this history. There are the Tokyo trials, famous like the Nuremberg trials, where everything is purged. The whole base, the official base that had arrived in Japan for the war, in short, the typical war crimes attributed to the Japanese, much like the Nuremberg trials for the Nazis. But in this case, the Japan trials, which are less known, but also happened. Right? Well, so at a base, specifically at the American base, in Yokosuka, which was located right next to Tokyo, a maritime base. And it is said that there in the bars of that base, well, they start making a cocktail. A cocktail that is simply a variation of the sour, so to speak. As we know, a sour is made of liquor, or rather a spirit, an alcohol, X, tequila, or whiskey, or whatever it may be, lime or lemon juice and sugar. Well, they make a variant the soldiers used to drink there. What was the next ingredient? They used vodka. Approximately they used it in equal amounts, which is a bit of a departure from the pure classic sour technique, don't you think? Where we can say the alcohol is twice the amount of the other ingredients. Triple sec, you can use as much as you like. If you prefer your kamikaze to be sweeter, you can add a bit of sugar to it. I am going to make it in the classic recipe, or at least the recipe that has reached us as the most authentic for this cocktail, because now we will see that this cocktail has several fathers, right? Let's squeeze a lime approximately. I'm going to squeeze the fresh lime, natural lime juice. That's half a lime more. They are tiny, and though I have plenty, I feel lost. Okay. Got the lime. I am going to add the lime juice now. That amount should be just about right. And so, as I was saying, the Americans who were there in Japan as an occupation force drank this cocktail at the base in honor of the enemy. They called them Kamikaze. Okay. This is typically garnished. The original Kamikaze with a lime slice. We will do that. Let's continue the story. It's very sour. I said you can add sugar. It is a strong cocktail. It is a cocktail. That is quite deceptive. It goes down easily because it is acidic and refreshing, but it really hits you in the end. 4 of these will knock you out. Okay, moving on. It is also supposed that this cocktail had a certain... There are those who say that in the 70s in California it had some level of popularity and was invented there. There is no real evidence of that. But well, perhaps in the late 70s the cocktail in California did have appreciation, or it arrived. What is certain is that we do know that in the year 74, at the Lounge of Elliot in Boston, there was a bartender who was named Liam. What does this drink do? He liked drinking Bosca Colima, and one day he said, I will add some Cointreau, triple sec. Instead of triple sec, I can use Cointreau. The cocktail is a bit sweeter with triple sec. Well, he said, and he called it Julian. Well, this lounge was a meeting center for important people in Boston. And then one day the Bosca Edmundo representative appeared there. And well, he must have tried the cocktail and liked it, so he released a Bosca Edmundo ad. But he says, I won't call it Julian, it's not commercial Julian, Julian. Which in English would be Ryan, no. It is commercial, so Borja gave it the name Kamikaze, which is another version of the name of the cocktail, I mean. We changed the promotion for his sales. Let's just say he claimed he didn't invent this cocktail, although they do say he gave it a good name. But there's more. Back in the year 1989, a magazine known as Motorboat and Sailing says that a certain Tony Luriano invented this in the year 72. All right, but he gave it a very unique and particular name. Jesus Christ Superstar. Jesus Christ Superstar. He was influenced by the film or the play, the famous work by Rice, Jesus Christ Superstar, which was a global sensation. And they claim that is what he named this cocktail. Well, these are some of the rare details in the history of this cocktail. This cocktail can also be served on the rocks during the summer months. The acidity has been reduced slightly, and adding sugar makes it better. In any case, I usually prepare this cocktail. When I make it, I tend to use a lime cordial. Instead of using fresh lime, I could add a spoonful of fresh lime, but I usually use the cordial. It tastes much better and is not as acidic, and I do not need to. If I use the lime cordial, it makes the cocktail taste better, and I serve it on the rocks with an orange peel or a lime slice. Anyway, I am going to make a variation, the next cocktail. Next video, I will make a version I am not sure I invented. because there is a variation that is the blue one, which would mean working with blue curacao instead of the standard curacao. Another one exists with Southern Comfort. Anyway, there are several variations. If you notice, it is almost the same as a margarita. It is a margarita with vodka. No salt, but it is a vodka margarita. Lime is triple sec, vodka and lime, while a margarita is tequila, triple sec and lime, so it is a margarita. A vodka margarita. Well, it is a kamikaze. Although the margarita is older, well, older, yes, it is older, perhaps historically. We will talk about the history of the margarita, which has much history and many fathers. Maybe it is the cocktail with the most fathers in mixology history. Well, I'll make a variation I invented recently. Well, I invented an improvement, a correction of this cocktail that might be to your liking, but that will be in the next cocktail. Thank you for following us. Please subscribe, and I'll keep sharing stories and making cocktails. Classics, moderns, variations, some original, and well, I hope you enjoy it. Until next time.